Welcome back! Today marks the official start of the second video of my sub-video series, Rick Reviews Scary Video Games with Beach. In this set of games, we'll have a more open flow conversation about scary video games, give a recommendation on if the game is worth a play, and advise you on how close you will get to pooping your pants. Welcome back, Beach.
Hey, Rick. Thanks, buddy. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to like this video, hit subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm already subscribed, and I've already hit the alerts button, so I feel like I'm already there. It's just the rest of the people that need to do it. I can only subscribe so many times.
And as we know, you are a trendsetter.
Truth. Almost as much as that Dreamboat Devin.
Oh, fucking Devin. Comes on my show, insults me.
And it's true. But I heard you call me a mouth breather, and you're probably right.
I also called you a nitwit.
Yeah, but I didn't take offense to that. I thought that was pretty on par at some point. And I'm like, excuse me, I have a bad nose from breathing through it. All right?
Well, it's funny, because Devin basically said the same thing. He's like, hey, mouth breather, too far. And I was like, yeah, but I also called you a nitwit. He's like, well, I'll take that one.
Yeah, I feel like I own that one.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about a video game instead of just our normal bullshitting?
Disagree.
Hard pass.
Yeah, hard pass on that one there, big man. All right.
Yeah, so what game are we talking about today?
The game that we are talking about today is 2008's Dead Space.
Yeah. I mean, it's all current events here. So we're going back to 2008.
What has happened nothing has happened in the interim 12 years since Dead Space came out and us recording this. Like, I cannot think of a single newsworthy event that has happened within those 12 years. So there's all the stuff that we'll cut out.
Exactly. Yeah. First off, I flipped it on, and I've never played Dead Space, and you're coming to this as somebody who's played it how many times?
I've played the original Dead Space probably 3 times. I know I played it like the day it came out, and then I think I played it just before Dead Space 2 came out, and then again just about 3 months ago.
And when you say the day it came out, did you just breeze right through nonstop?
No, because the game takes a good 12 hours to play through.
Okay.
And those of you in the channel don't quite know this, but I have an attention issue. So I play for about 3 hours at a time or so, and it took me probably a week to burn through the game like as it should be played.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. I was like, did BJ all of a sudden grow in attention, or did you lose one?
No, this is 2008. 2008 BJ had even less attention span than 2020 BJ does.
But anyway, when I flipped on the game, I mean, I was shocked. It looks amazing. I'm playing on a 1X, and so I went and looked it up, and this is not enhanced for 1X. It just looks that good.
Yeah, when I played it again, when I popped it on and played it 3 months ago, I was shocked. I was like, these graphics are amazing. It's the graphics. I'm always going to talk about sound design in horror games because it's incredible. But the graphics in this one specifically, I was like, this could have been released for the one, and it still looks gorgeous.
Yeah, it looked amazing. And one of the things I thought was probably pretty innovative at the time was the fact that there was no HUD, right? It was all just on his suit, and that was all integrated. That was a really cool design. And probably one of the first people to do that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think one of the important things, and this is something that they should bring back, I mean, they should bring it into real world, is we should have a health bar on our spine all the time. And then you're just walking around and be like, dude, his health bar is in the yellow, man. Like, just look at his spine. Ooh, uh-oh, somebody should get that guy, like, a weird can of soda that is a green can of soda that will replenish his health. Just a few bars.
And the gameplay was pretty smooth too. Like, I didn't find that I was fighting with things. This is just a really clean, well-made game. I do think though that they threw a lot of different like mechanics at the wall to see what landed.
Oh, absolutely. And you can tell with that as you go into when you jump, because spoiler, I just finished playing Dead Space 2, and just to sort of tie that in, they kick out a lot of the mechanics that didn't work from Dead Space 1 when they moved to Dead Space 2 and really doubled down on the majority of stuff that worked. They really took a big swing with some of the mechanics for this game, and I really enjoyed. So I thought that I love the tap to see where to go, like to have how it sends you on a little path for it, like something that will come up later on in games as we get a little bit more advanced in games themselves. That comes up as a normal feature, but this was the first time I think I ever really saw that, and I thought that was a really cool sort of feature. Instead of, I found myself not staring at the map as much as I normally would in a game that provides a map, because if I'm given a map, I'm gonna use a map.
Yeah, no, for sure. I found myself using that directional cue thing way more than the map, because the map was actually pretty terrible. They try to do that like 3D model stack where you gotta like turn it and flip it and
oh yeah, bop it.
Yeah, flip it and fry that BOOTY.
Yeah.
Oh my.
That was really good, and I think this is a good time to kind of put it in context of where it was in the world of horror games, sort of as
yeah,
horror.
Please.
So this came out in 2008, and I'm gonna say it was the first real response to 2005's Resident Evil 4. It was really the first time that there's actually a big response in the action horror games that came out. And looking at it, in 2008, you also had the other horror games that came out were like Left 4 Dead, the first one, Alone in the Dark, a garbage game, but with really pretty fire mechanics. And the second worst Silent Hill game, Silent Hill Homecoming. This came out, and it was easy to say this was by far the best horror game from 2008. I think it was the best horror game that came out since 2005's Resident Evil 4. But it's in its own style of horror. Because there's two, when it comes down to it, I feel like there are two basic types of horror video games. There's the action horror video game, such as this, Resident Evil, and then there's the more hidey games, more stealthy games, like your Amnesias. The last one that you and I talked about, Made of Skur, is the other style of horror games.
Yeah.
What's better? I don't know. I think that the other style of horror game is scarier because you can't fight. You can't control what you're doing. But I think Dead Space, with its mechanics, they sort of bridged that gap by making the fighting more difficult, since you couldn't just shoot them. You couldn't just shoot them in the head.
100% agree. One of the things that they really do to heighten that fear is like you're walking through thin hallways, and there are these vents all around, and you're kind of, they jump out at you, and the first time, you might get got, but then like you're on edge, and then they'll drop behind you after you pass them, and then you come through the doors, and they're even tinier. But then I have to say, once you walk into a room that's big and open, you're like, oh, fuck.
Or right after you see the first body arise, like, does its Mike Myers rising and then it comes at you. Like, after that, there is not a dead body on the ground that you're not shooting with that plasma cutter, or you're not running up at and stomping on as soon as you can to, like, break it up into 100 tiny pieces so that the necromorph cannot come after you.
Yeah, that first time, though, I saw that body lying on the floor, I just shot him right away. I was like, Mama didn't raise no fool. I've played some horror video games before.
And that is, and it's a great mechanic. I thought that was a really fun mechanic, that if you saw a body, especially once you get introduced to the infectors, the ones that I call them, they're kind of like the bat flatworm, they'll raise up the new ones and they'll turn into the upgraded necromorph. Like, they're the dark colored ones that can go a lot faster, they take a lot more damage and stuff. Once you start dealing with them, as soon as I saw something on the floor, boom, I'm shooting it with a line gun, I'm shooting it with my plasma cutter. Let's be honest, I was shooting it with my plasma cutter because that weapon is OP from the start.
I mean, as long as you have ammo for it, you didn't need hardly anything else. I mean, the boom cannon came in handy for some things, but just upgrade that first weapon and it's just sick.
I was always a fan of the line cutter. I always thought the line cutter was a good sort of alt weapon because it was so powerful and it sent out such a big sweeping, like, cleave basically through the room that it was very handy, like, especially when you start dealing with the first pregnants and where you just want to take their heads off, but you have a bunch of other necromorphs also around. Excuse me, I'm gonna say xenomorph a few times, and I'm pretty sure the Ishimura was made by Wayland Industries, just to kind of put this into context of what I've thought of.
That's a great segue, because I'm curious if you think that this goes past homage and goes into, like, just straight up jack and shit. Because, man, they borrow so much, right? You have the dude in the wall like Hicks from Aliens, and then you sit down in that cockpit and you shoot like you're in Star Wars, and then you have the xenomorph like small hallway feel, and then I mean this game really is Event Horizon, right?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
This game is Event Horizon. It's Alien if Alien also had Sam Neill in it, and he was not as much the character. He's just some. Let's just put it this way. He's an engineer. Isaac is an engineer, and you can tell. I'm like, listen, this is the worst type of hero to have, because engineers are the heroes of nothing in this world. So it's nice. This is a nice level of fantasy, I guess, that we get to have.
Yeah. No, I can 100% support that theory. As an engineer myself, I can 100% say that there is no way an engineer is the hero of anything.
So this was a nice piece of fantasy. But actually, I do think that I feel like it's a good homage to, while borrowing a lot of the characteristics from Alien, from Event Horizon, from Star Wars, as you mentioned. While it has those pieces, I think it is still an homage because it brings in its own element, and that's the story. I think the story of this game is incredible. The twists that it takes, especially as you get forward to with all the visions of Nicole and everything going forward, it really takes this alternate look, and you really have to question what is actually going on with Isaac. How much of this is real? How much is just caused by the marker? What is this marker? It's such a good Lovecraftian twist on this tired, as we said, like well-trod territory of the sci-fi horror.
Yeah, one of the things that when I got done, I was like, man, the story was great. I mean, I was super enthralled. Like you said, when you're looking for, what do they call that thing?
The marker? The
marker, yeah. And then I looked it up afterwards, and they said that this was written by Warren Ellis. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, yeah, obviously he's written some great things. And then I looked up some other stuff that he had written, and I was like, whoa, Warren Ellis seems like a real creep.
Certainly not so chill. Not that chill, but this was a really good story. Really well written.
Yeah. I mean, he's a talented creep, right? I mean, there are people like that out there.
Yes. I have never heard of
I'm looking at one.
Really? You got a mirror in that room? Actually,
no, I mean, we're both on screen here, so I'm not going to tell you which one. One of the things I did appreciate, though, is that there were just a few jump scares, which made them even more delightful, right? Like the fact that you're not getting one every 30 seconds. Like when you get them, like you actually like do a little girl scream, and it's pretty fun.
I was constantly waiting for them, though. Like, I was playing this game, as that Dreamboat Devin and I talk about when we're playing Fall Guys, we are in our constipation stance when we are doing it. We're just trying to push out that, because we're sitting at the very front of the couch, edge of the cushion through the entire game. And I'll say it's 12 hours of sitting at the edge of my couch, just waiting for that next one, waiting for the tentacle to come back out and snag me as I'm running through the room, waiting for the necromorph, or waiting for an infector to just swoop in from one of the vents and infect that one body that I forgot to stomp on. I was ready for it, and when it didn't come, that made the next one so much worse. This is what I love about horror games, is I love that anticipation. I love making it difficult for me. I don't want to watch. I don't want to look forward. I want to cover my eyes and like go into the room, but I can't. I have to pay attention, or else it's gonna jump at me and kill me. I think that's such a good way to play a game, and it's so effectively done in Dead Space.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Although I do want to know, how was this game not the most controversial thing in the world? I mean, this was about the time people were freaking out about Harry Potter being satanic, right? And in Dead Space, a dead baby wraps its tentacles around your neck, and you rip it off and beat it to death more than once.
Mm-hmm. That is a common theme, and spoiler alert, it happens in the next two games as well. Like there is something about babies that are also octopuses that they just really want to go after. Very Lovecraftian. That's a very Lovecraftian take on it. I thought the reanimation, it kind of goes back to what we were scared of when we went into the 2000s. A lot of things were about apocalypses. They were about religions going awry. It really felt like this was written earlier than the game came out, because it was tapping into the fears that we saw in the films that were coming out at the beginning of the 2000s.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. Yeah, it's very much in line with that style of horror. And you're probably a better judge at that, being the horror fan that you are.
You don't need to say probably.
It's redundant.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of horror. It have been forever. So this is sort of my jam. And seeing how this horror has evolved, where we were looking at apocalypses, we were looking at the loss of the individual. This was just before zombies came back into the zeitgeist. So we weren't quite there, except 2008 is when we were getting back into zombies. So it was a little ahead of its time in the sense that we were moving into that in the films, but it was harkening back to the base fears that we had just 8 years beforehand, where we were dealing with a lot of fear of religions taking over, fear of apocalypses, fear of losing our homes, which was a big deal back at the beginning of the 2000s. Just like in the 80s, it was the satanic film. 90s into the 2000s where torture porn became big.
So, I'm not the horror guy that you are, right? But it seems like a lot of times in horror video games, like there's like a ramp up and then kind of a relaxing period, and then a ramp up and then a relaxing period. And I felt like this just kind of slowly ramped up for like the first 2 acts, and I didn't really see that subside. Early on I felt like problem was it's like I had too much stuff I wanted to carry, right? I wasn't using as much ammo, and I wasn't using the health bars, and then like all of a sudden I just was like, oh crap, I'm out of stuff. Like it just builds and builds and builds. And then I thought it was sort of a really different take on that kind of normal pendulum swing that you get. What did you think?
I will agree. I felt that there were less climax refractory period as you would have. I'm going to compare this to Resident Evil 4 because it has a lot of the same concepts in the way the horror worked, even to the point of you have to fight each enemy differently because you have to aim for different types of the body parts to be able to actually fight them effectively. Where Resident Evil 4 had a lot of climaxes, downtime, climax, build, climax, downtime. This did not have those. This built, and then it would have a bit of a climax. You would learn a new enemy. You would have a big room, a big extra claustrophobic room. Like the room got bigger and I got more claustrophobic because of it, because there was more places for things to just come at me from. You'd have these big rooms and then it would lull for just a sec and then build again as you walk back into another room or you find another bench, and then right as you upgrade your plasma cutter, because why not? Of course you're going to upgrade the plasma cutter. You're going to be using it the very next room. There was so much build and then it finally starts climaxing. Once it starts climaxing, it's just that multiple orgasm. Over, like throughout that Act 3.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you could ever ask for.
That's it. It's what I go for. It's what I look for in a game.
Yeah. So, we used pants pooping last time. But I think, if we're going to start doing this a steady thing, we should standardize a scale. And so...
Damn engineers. We standardize... let's get our slide rules out.
No, we don't use slide rules anymore.
Boo. Boo.
I know. It's all MathCAD or TEDS or whatever.
The viewers can't see it. This is my incredibly interested face.
So we can use a normal rating scale to see like how you rate the game, but I also think how scary the game is. So we'll have 2 ratings. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So are we going on your normal scale of 6 through it's a 6 through 10?
No, you can give it. I only do 6 through 10 because I quit playing if it's lower.
I know. I'm gonna make fun of your rubric as many times as I can. That is something that king amongst men, Devin and I talk about, is this rubric that we enjoy making fun of you for, because it really is like 4 levels, but it starts at 6. But I will use that same scale even if it doesn't sound like it, because I'm going to give this game a 9 in the regular scheme. And the only reason that I don't give it a solid 10 is because some of its mechanics are a little dated at this point.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I think if I were to play this when it first came out, it would probably be a 9 or 10. But even today, I'd give it an 8 today. I'd say it holds up really, really well. It's a fantastic game. It's definitely worthy of a play. And if you're on the Xbox ecosystem, then you can pick it up and play it on your current system pretty cheap. I don't know if you can on PlayStation. They've got weird backwards compatibility things.
Mm-hmm. Is it still on? I think at time of recording, I believe it's on Games Pass. So you could probably play it for the cost of your Games Pass subscription.
That's right, because they introduced EA Play recently, and so it is on there through EA Play.
By the way, my entire income has been supplemented by Games Pass paying for me to talk about Dead Space on video game reviews sites. So this is now paying for my house, is me talking about Dead Space on your little channel here.
Well, we do rake in the dough here.
Okay, so I said a 9, and that's, I bet I would probably say a 10 when I first played it.
Okay, so you're a 10-9, and I'm a 8 now, and probably would have been a 9 or a 10.
I think at the time it was sort of, we were a little bereft of this style of horror game. They were going a little more action, and even though this was very action oriented, they were going more fast-paced action, where this was a good claustrophobic, thoughtful action. So I would have said a 10 back in 2008. It's a solid 9 now, and I highly recommend to play. Cannot tell you, well, I have told you repeatedly, but I'm going to say it for this. I am so excited that you decided you wanted to play this series, because I adore them, and I really want to talk about them.
Yeah, they're great. Or at least the first one's great. I'll tell you what I think the second one is like it.
What is your other scale? You mentioned 2.
So my other scale is going to be 0 to 10 Wilhelms. Are you familiar with the Wilhelm screen?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think we just give it a 0 to 10 on how scary it is, and that's how many Wilhelms you'll give it. So how many Wilhelms would you give Dead Space?
In 2008, I bet I would have given it 8 Wilhelms. Today, I'll probably give it 7 Wilhelms or so, just because I think I'm a little more desensitized to some of it, and knowing the way the video games are played, and seeing how horror games have evolved to the current games now, like currently waiting, really excited for Resident Evil 8. That is a completely different style of horror game that I'm going to say Resident Evil 7 probably would be up in those high levels, where I think this still has some of the dated constructs where it's really built on the jump scare, and I think the jump scare can go a long way, but the atmosphere is what's going to drag it forward. And that's what makes this the 7, is that 7 or 8, because it is dragged forward from the atmosphere.
Okay. See, I would only give it a 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think it had moments of general anxiety to it, but I didn't walk away creeped out. We didn't sleep with the lights on or anything like that. So I did find there were moments that were like, oh, yeah, but it didn't stick with me like that. And so I don't think I could go that high in terms of scary factor.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, I thought Maid of Sker was scarier in general.
I'll agree. Maid of Sker is scarier. I think Silent Hill 3 is a scarier game than this one was. Well, I know that doesn't matter. That one doesn't
mean anything to me.
No, but it's a scarier game. But those are also games, as I spoke of at the beginning, this is an action horror game versus a stealth horror game. And I think the stealth horror games are always going to be scarier than the action horror games, because you can't fight. So I will give it, I'll put that quick caveat on my 7, is that for an action horror game, that's where it goes. If it were, I would say a 4, Resident Evil 4 would have been a 4 horror, 4 Wilhelm. This is a 7 based on the atmosphere, the claustrophobic. I'm a bit claustrophobic, so I have that. I already am built to be a little bit more concerned about this anyways. But this is I put it for action horror, I put it at a 7.
Awesome. Well, did you have any final thoughts on the game? Anything that you want to highlight that you thought was amazing and deserved a little special attention?
Yes. I really think that if you want to look at enemy design, this game is exemplary at choosing new enemies, giving you a different way to fight enemies, forcing you to be creative in how you fought people. Made the small areas even more claustrophobic because you had to aim at them. You couldn't just go for body shots, especially the first time you start fighting the pregnants and you shoot one of them in the stomach. Dude, forget about it, because you now have like 15 guys that you can barely fight off of you. Like, you start stomping and they're still going to get on top of you and take some damage. You're going to take some damage. Like, the enemy design in this game was really over the top. And I find it to just the necromorphs and the different types of necromorphs and how you had to fight them really was such an innovative concept that it elevated the horror of the game itself. They made an action horror game have that similar taste as the more fear-based stealth horror, where you actually have to calculate where your enemy's going to be at any given time, as opposed to just taking a Tommy gun and mowing through them like you could in any of the rest of the games.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I loved about this game was, even though I do think there were too many mechanics in general, there were some really great ones, like the anti-gravity gun, right? That was awesome. The zero-G stuff and going out in outer space and having to worry about your air consumption. I thought some of that stuff was really, really well done, and I was super impressed.
When you're out in space and it's silent and
Yes.
they start coming at you. Also, you played this with your headphones on, yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Gotta play horror. Folks, if you're not playing horror games with your headphones on, you are doing it incorrectly. But this was one of those, when you would go out into the zero-G, or you'd go into, you're out on the outside of the Ishimura, and it was silent, and suddenly you had the guys that were like the mermaid enemies coming jumping at you and stuff. Dude, forget about that. That was terrifying. You couldn't see them, and then all of a sudden they are on top of you.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Wilhelm screams for days.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked it. Anyway, I think with that, I'm going to have to get to editing, because we're pretty long right now.
Yeah. We probably said a few things that can be cut out. Well, you said a few things that can be cut out.
Yeah, no, of course, it's all me.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 36-minute video of me saying welcome and then just you talking and breathing.
That sounds about right. I have been making sure to breathe only through my mouth, just to make sure that this helps. Us nitwits love it.
So, thank you for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Rick, I really appreciate you having me on, and I can't wait to come back for more horror talk, because I feel like you're learning so much from this, and I love seeing that little twinkle in your eye.
You mean from you, don't you?
Yeah, very much so.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. We appreciate your time today, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.